everybody, and welcome back to the SUV Properties Podcast. My name is Caden Stanley, and I'm joined here by our broker, Melanie Eden. If you guys like what you're going to see today and have seen in the past weeks, go ahead and drop a like. If you guys love what you guys are seeing, please share, subscribe, and take a look at our future videos. Also, visit our website, SUVproperties.com, to see a lot more information, and hopefully we can help you out. Today, we're here to talk about 21-day letters, or the fancy term is security deposit reconciliation. Right behind evictions, it's the second most litigated thing in the state of Wisconsin when it comes to rental properties. And if not done properly, the owner could be faced with paying double what the security deposit was back to the tenant. So that's kind of why it's a very big topic to talk about and something that is often messed up. So we're here to help and give you hopefully a little bit more information about that. So kind of going into that, when does the 21-day letter timer start for a landlord?
Every state has different rules as far as when the 21-day letters start. You don't want to say security deposit reconciliation letter every single time?
No, it gets a little tired.
Okay.
Yeah, 21-day letter.
21-day letter is our slang. That's right. It's quick. So everything we're going to tell you is based on the state of Wisconsin law. And there's the law, and then there's the interpretation of the law, which is done by our judges and our court commissioners. So we're going to tell you what the law is, then we're going to tell you how it's interpreted, and then I'll give you our 50-cent version of what we do so that we make sure that we are not returning double damages, because nobody wants to do that. So the law says that you must return the security deposit or send out the security deposit reconciliation letter within 21 days from the end of the lease. Now there is the gray area. When is the end of the lease? Is it when the lease is over and the tenant is still occupying the building? Is it the end of the lease? Is it when the tenant turns in their keys to you? What happens if the tenant doesn't turn in keys? What if the tenant abandons the property and you don't know they've abandoned the property and no one's communicated with you? So that is why there's a lot of gray area, which gives the court system a lot of room for interpretation. So when does it actually begin? In my mind, it begins when you either A, secured the building and you found it abandoned, B, tenant turned in keys. I don't care when the lease ends, because to me that's irrelevant, because if someone vacates the property and they have 6 months left in their lease, I am not going to remember 6 months and 21 days later that I'm supposed to validate their security deposit, and I want to get it filled and re-rented and figure out what my pricing on that is. So when I get keys in my hand, it means a trip to the property that day. And if it's winter, it means a trip to the property within minutes of receiving those keys, because I got to make sure that heat is on. Yeah,
100%. And kind of looking at that, kind of rolling into the next step, what are the steps when it comes to a 21-day letter, right? What does the process actually look like?
Okay. Tenant turns in keys. We have a check sheet on the top of every tenant file about what happens next. The day they turned in the keys, we write down, did they turn the keys in person? Did they drop them off in our Dropbox? Did they send us an email that says we left the keys behind in the building? Did they send us an email that says you're not getting your keys back, good luck getting in? We get all sorts of those emails. Or we just get the biggest problem of all.
Nothing.
Nothing. That is, when you hear crickets, you know there's a problem.
Yeah.
And then that's when we start driving by the property and we start looking in windows, posting abandonment letters.
Seeing if there's things outside in the yard.
Calling We Energies to see if they've taken service out of their name, looking for debris in the yard, looking for tall weeds so that we can figure out what's going on with the property and if our 21-day clock is starting to tick or not. The third step after we've gotten the keys, we filled out our check sheet of how we've gotten the keys, is to actually go to the property. So we go to the property, we hang a lockbox, and we take dated photos. The reason it's important to take dated photos is if we have to go back to court, we're going to show up with date and time stamp photos of when we were at the building. This is what it looked like, because we're going to have to prove out our 21-day letter and our invoices based on the photos. Because when a tenant takes us back to court, they can show up with nothing and the judge or the court commissioner will instantly cut our bill in half. or dismiss our entire bill at all. Even though they've showed up with nothing, they have no defense, we have to come with everything, even though they're taking us to court and the burden of proof falls on them. Doesn't matter. If you do not come prepared, be ready to lose. So,
Yeah, don't come at all.
or don't come at all, okay? So we take the photos, they're dated, we load them into our system, we send them into the tenant portal, we send them over to our attorney so that when we're reconciling the security deposit, if we're not sending the money back, we do 120%. I know there's no such thing as 120%, but we do 180% of what needs to be done so that when we go to court, we're prepared. Because even when we are prepared, what happens?
Still, sometimes you end up getting either cut in half or a bunch of those things. They just try to dismiss it or something. So even coming fully prepared is sometimes you won't get it. So that's why it's super important.
Right. We came prepared to court a couple weeks ago, and we had $17,000 worth of repairs. The tenant did not show up, and we got a judgment for $7,000.
Just like that. They didn't even show up.
I know. They didn't even defend it. Just the court commissioner says, oh, this seems like too much money. We're going to cut it down. So even when you're prepared, it doesn't work. So we itemize those damages. And if it's a single family home, we take a picture of the water meter. We send it into the Milwaukee Water Works. They give us a final read so that we can send that along with the letter. And then I do an estimated 21-day letter if I'm not returning their security deposit to them. And I itemize unpaid rent, final water bill, debris removal. And the only thing I'm doing in the estimated 21-day letter is reconciling their security deposit. I'm not trying to figure out the damages on the property because it doesn't matter. The 21-day letter is all about security deposit reconciliation. The final letter that you send out once all the bills are in, that's the one that you take to court. That's the one that you submit to collections. So we only are worried about if they've paid $1,000 in security deposit, did they have damages and water bill and unpaid rent that exceeds $1,000? Boom, get that letter out in the mail as quickly as possible. If there's a gray area and they have a little bit in bills, but they left the property in mostly move-in condition, that is when the 21-day letter becomes hard, because now you've got to figure out, how do I estimate the repairs?
Because you're dancing along that $1,000 line.
We're dancing along that $1,000 line, and you can't get work done necessarily in 21 days and meet the threshold to get those letters out on time. So in my mind, my clock starts ticking the day I get keys, and I'm usually reconciling the estimated 21-day if they're not getting their security deposit back within 2 days of them moving out. And then I get to a final. Because a lot of landlords I know want to push the envelope. They want to hold on to that security deposit as much as possible, as long as possible, or they want to make sure all of the invoices are in before they send that letter out. If you don't send it out on time, or your 21 days falls on a Sunday, and you didn't put it in the mail on Saturday, it's got to be postmarked.
Yeah.
Double damages. What if it's a holiday? You have to be looking ahead and paying attention to holidays, postal service dates, and when they're delivering, and what time you're going to drop it in the box. Because you could say, hey, I put that in the post box, on the 21st day. It was a Saturday and it was 5 p.m. Post office closes at noon. You're not getting that thing stamped until Monday. Double damages. So the sooner, the better.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of as I know you've been talking now too, like water bills and things like that, what are some of the items that a security deposit can be held for, not necessarily just damages?
Unpaid rent, legal fees. If their lease says that they have to pay for water. Their lease says that they have to cut the grass, tall grass, if they didn't shovel the snow. If there are plumbing problems in the building, our leases indicate that clogged drains and plumbing repairs caused by the tenant is their responsibility, and they get logged on their account. Garbage violations, nuisance violations, debris removal from the property, locked change because they didn't turn in keys. Those are all things that you can hold from the security deposit. Holes in walls. Then if there's a hole in the wall, then you can charge for painting. But you can't charge for painting if it's just normal wear and tear. What's your definition of normal wear and tear? My definition of normal wear and tear is always very different than the judge's definition of normal wear and tear. I mean, unless they are coloring on the walls, putting holes in walls, big holes from, they tried to move their TV around to the 24 different walls in the house, and there's holes everywhere for wall repair. Most painting falls under normal wear and tear. What we do in our lease is that we have non-smoking leases, so that we can't rent a property that someone has smoked in to a non-smoker. It's a no-go.
Yeah.
So we have to prime it and we have to paint it. The hard part about that is, what can you not photograph?
You can't photograph smell. Yeah, how do you prove that, right?
Right.
I mean, unless there's, residue obviously from the ceiling, sometimes you get that, but sometimes you don't even have that. I mean, we've had plenty of properties where you just truly can't, but it's a whole other cost just because it's something that you can't see, so it's not necessarily always tangible proof.
Right, so we're looking for ashtrays that are left behind, cigarette butts that are left in sinks, and toilets, and in the sink in the basement. We're looking for anything that would indicate that someone smoked there.
To help.
Yeah. The other big problem is animal smells. You can't photograph that as well, but hopefully they've left behind some dog dishes or an animal cage, and then they have a no pet lease, and then we can say, well, they had a no pet lease, clearly they had an animal here.
Yeah.
Because I can't photograph the smell, I can't document it, the only thing I can do is prime and paint it away.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, that's why it's really important to know what's in your lease and what they're responsible for and what you're responsible, because at the end of the day, kind of as you said, it really depends on what is covered in the lease for what can be held in terms of security deposits. So that's why it's important.
Normal wear and tear, you cannot charge them for normal wear and tear. You have a freshly painted house, they lived there for 12 months, and you have marks on every single wall in every single room that you can't wash out. That is normal wear and tear, and you get to paint that entire place again at your own expense.
Yeah.
Because for better or for worse, tenants feel everything should be painted. Everything should be brand new when they move in. Like carpeting. We don't do carpeting.
Yeah.
Because carpeting is an absolute wear item, and the goo and the gum and the smell and the dirt, you cannot steam clean that away for the most part. So we do hardwood floors, we do laminate flooring, we paint flooring because you can clean that for the most part. Tenants let it absorb right into the carpeting, and then you're left with a big stain in there. And carpeting used to have a shelf life of 10 years as a rental. Well, Milwaukee has decided it now has a shelf life of 7 years. So if you're lucky enough and you have a long-term tenant that lives there 7 years.
That gets through one tenancy.
That gets through one tenant, but if they live there 3 years, you can depreciate only 3 years away. In theory, you can charge them for 4 years worth of carpeting on that for the stains that are left behind. Laminate is more expensive on the front end, but on the back end, it saves you a bunch of hassle.
Yeah, agreed. So taking a look at the 21-day letter, so you're at the point now, you're serving the 21-day letter. What necessarily needs to be described or included, right? Do you need, receipts for the work, if they, or what exactly do you all need in order to provide an accurate 21-day letter?
When I do the 21-day letter, we have our rent ledger. So if I'm charging them for unpaid rent, it'll show what their unpaid rent is. That's why we do a final water read and we get the notice from Milwaukee Water Works. I include that with the 21-day letter. If I have the debris removal bill, that usually comes in relatively quickly, and then the lock change bill if they don't turn in keys. Those are 4 things right out of the gate that I can use as my ammunition for the estimated 21-day letter. Sure. Because that is my only focus with the first letter, is the estimate to clear their security deposit. We worry about final when all the bills are in, and then we can proceed towards collections, but that is another podcast.
Yeah, agreed. And so when it comes to sending the 21-day letter, right, I know most times you're sending it to either the forwarding address or the last known address, but what happens if, let's say, you have multiple people on the lease, or you have a situation where maybe one of the tenants leaves mid-tenancy and the other ones continue with the lease?
If you have multiple tenants that are on the lease, when you do your refund, either it's the letter or the check, they are all listed on the check, the money order, the cashier's check, however you're sending that money back to them. They all must be listed because they are all on the lease. And you send it to the last known address of record unless they provided you their forwarding address. But the forwarding address has to indicate that all of the people moved to that forwarding address.
Yeah.
What if 2 moved to the forwarding address and 2 moved over here? Well, then you send it to the last known address of record, which is where they live, because that's what your lease says, because you're not splitting checks up because you don't know who paid the security deposit. One person could have paid the security deposit, or they could have paid the majority of the security deposit, and the other people gave like $100 towards it. It's up to them to split it up.
Yeah.
Now, if someone leaves mid-lease, we require that they give us a letter saying they're surrendering their portion of the security deposit to the remaining tenant that is there. How often does that happen? Occasionally, but we try to get that so that we know we can then get a new lease with the one remaining person that's there, so we can reconcile that security deposit. The problem is most people don't think that far ahead until we're actually at the end game.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out, where does the money go? Now, where should you take the money from? That is a very important question.
That is a great question. And I know one thing, kind of to touch on the money itself too, is something that a lot of people recommend is to put it in a non-interest bearing account, because technically that's not your money, the security deposit money. So any interest that you make on that money technically also isn't yours. So I know that's another great area as well.
None of that interest is ours. I have a trust account, and I send all security deposits to the owners. How they handle it on their end, that is up to them.
Yeah.
My security deposits are held in my trust account, and the requirements of a trust account is that the state of Wisconsin gets the interest from my trust account,
Yeah.
and my bank sends it to them quarterly. So I'm not reconciling pennies trying to figure out, well, they paid me $1,000 security deposit and I held on to it for 9 months, and now I owe them 30 additional cents.
Yeah.
No, I don't do that. But making sure that you send money from the correct account. I have a story. Do you want to hear a story?
Of course.
All right. It's not a good story, but it is a story. So we had a tenant who rented from us, and I learned a very, very expensive lesson, is that because I have the people that we manage for, I have a trust account. And my own money for the business is called an operating account. So I have all owners' money go in the trust account, and then I have my money, and my rent money gets swept out of the trust account into my operating account. I pay my bills, I pay my mortgage payments, I do payroll, buy building supplies out of the operating account. So I had sent this tenant her full security deposit back. She rented from us for about 16, 18 months. She left the place decent. I sent her a check from my trust account. Well, she then, about a year passes, and she decides she wants to reapply to rent from us. So we have a rental application from her. We have her new address where she's living. And oh, by the way, her mom still rents from us. Okay. So she then has, the problem with people being able to take pictures of the checks now and send them into the bank, is she took a picture of the security deposit check from my trust account that we sent to her, and she made, with the miracle of computers and a printer, she made a new check. How we caught it is I was only at check 2050, just to pick a number, and the number that she had on her check was like 3,000 something. So it was way out of order, and it was for $1,500. So when we went to reconcile my bank account, We're like, why is there a 3? We're not even that far into the checks. And then we got a copy of the check from the bank. It didn't have my signature on it. It had that $3,000 number. It had my routing number on the bottom of it for my account and the bank's routing number. The font was different for SUV properties, and the date was a current date. And then we got a picture of the back of the check. It was her signature, which we matched it up to her driver's license, which she provides to us with the application, as well as her signature on the application. She had gone to Walmart with the fake check for $1,500, and she got $1,500 in cash from Walmart.
Wow.
Right, so that came out of my checking account. Then the next level of problem, once I figured it out, is I had to close down that checking account. I had to reroute all of the owners, open up a new trust account, transfer all of the owners who were sending money to a new trust account. So they didn't get their money for 2 weeks. It was about 80 hours of work for my bookkeeper to move everybody over to a new account. And then I started sending the security deposits out to them using a cashier's check or a money order. You use a cashier's check if it's over $1,000, and you use a money order if it's under $1,000, and the bank charges different fees for each one of those. Well, then I learned a lesson on that as well, because when you send a money order out in the mail, it's like sending cash.
Yeah, anybody can.
Right, so I had a money order that was sent out that was never delivered by the post office. So the tenant's calling me looking for her security deposit refund, and we say we sent it out. I call the bank, and the bank says, well, it's like sending cash in the mail. So it's gone. So I had to get a new money order. She had to come into the office, so I think I sent her back like $1,500. So it cost me $3,000 to give her her $1,500 security deposit back because the money is lost in the mail. So I took the next step, and I opened up a brand new checking account, which is only for security deposits, and we sweep security deposit money when we're ready to send it over to the account, because that first person, because it's my trust account, at any given time, I could have several $100,000 in that account. She could have gotten $3,000 or $4,000. The overall cost to correct her problem cost me $4,000. The other problem cost me $3,000. But the police went to her address where she was, because we had the rental application, and she admitted that she did this. Walmart had her on their video, and she agreed to pay me back. So I filled out a whole bunch of forms with the police department, and now we're pushing 3 years. I've gotten $100. She's out walking around, because she pleaded so that she didn't have to go to jail, that she would pay me back, but there's no follow-up to actually paying back. So
Interesting.
I've gotten $100, so I'm still $3,900 behind with her.
And a lesson learned.
And a lesson learned. So be very, very, very careful. Do not trust anyone you're sending money to in the mail. That's why I went to the money orders till I learned that lesson. So set up a new checking account for your security deposit reconciliations.
There you go, another lesson learned, and another good story that you just don't know until you have it happen to you, right? Or hopefully these listeners can listen.
You guys will never have it happen to you because you heard it here first about what to do. So we appreciate you taking the time to listen to us today. We are real estate professionals trying to spread the knowledge and joy of real estate around the world. Go to our website, call us, email us. We want to hear from you. See you next week.